Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's webinar with ZOLLER Incorporated and ToolsUnited. Today's topic is Manage Tool Data Like a Pro with ZOLLER and ToolsUnited. My name is Dietmar Moll. I'm the Director of Business Development, and I will moderate today's session. I have with me Felix Krenberg and David Darling. I would hand it over to these gentlemen to introduce himself before we start the presentation.
Felix?
Yep, welcome everyone also from my side. My name is Felix Kambach, as Dietmar already mentioned. I'm the National Service Manager for ZOLLER Incorporated and responsible for the United States. And I'm happy to be here today to be part of this webinar. David, it's your turn. Thank you.
Thanks. I appreciate it. My name is David Darling. I am the person responsible for SimSource's business here in North America as its Chief Strategy Officer. To my host today, ZOLLER, guys, thank you very much for having me. I'm really looking forward to getting in some good take-home value for your folks here.
Thank you very much. Then I would say let's start with the presentation. I will share my screen. So as usual, we have possibilities to ask questions. You can see my screen. This webinar is basically all participants are muted. Nevertheless, you have the possibility to ask questions to our subject matter experts. As you see on the screen, to the right, there is a chat function, and then you are able to type in your questions. During the session, all the questions will be answered at the end of the webinar, and we certainly do it as due diligent as possible. So let's get started. As I mentioned before, today's topic is Manage Tool Data Like a Pro with ZOLLER and ToolsUnited. I prepared a quick agenda. I will provide a brief overview about ZOLLER, the ZOLLER company itself. Then later on, David will talk about SimSource, how tool data can be managed. And also then afterwards, we will have a live presentation with ToolLink and ZOLLER TMS, and at the end, the Q&A. So ZOLLER is basically was founded in 1945 and the US subsidiary in 1997. We are roughly 100 employees, split in service, sales, and software development. We have more or less 4 product portfolio presetter measuring machines, which we are known most for, inspection machines, automation, and our main topic is today tool management. So now this graphic basically displays where tool data is utilized within your company. The idea here is to have a digital twin across the board, right from the CAM up to the finished part. So what do I mean with digital twins? You normally have a digital twin for your machine tool, you have a digital twin of your fixture, but very often many companies do lack to have the digital twin of the actual tool which is used later on for the machining. So quickly, it starts right in the CAM where the digital twin is utilized. It goes down to the tool crib where tools need to be assembled, and then also the tools need to be preset, and everything else will go later on to the machine. So now you can say, well, we have this under control, but when you really look at the big picture, and it's kind of a little bit a messy diagram, messy representation, but tool data is utilized across your company more or less in every department. We need information, we need interfaces to ERP systems, we need interfaces to PLM systems, to MES systems. And as I explained before, CAM, then down on the shop floor, we have a digital twin available. We are talking about Industry 4.0 smart manufacturing, and this is an absolute base to have this data available. I can just say, and you hear very often, everything is driven by data today. I 100% agree. And I think it becomes more and more important in the industry. And it's one thing is clear, data is king. So now I basically will turn it over to David.
Thanks, Dietmar. Really well said. Data is king. Obviously, as we're going to get into, I'm assuming, oh, I was going to say, can you see me? But I don't think you can. So let me get going back. But while we're getting this going, folks, SimSource is a company whose exclusive business is getting vendor and OEM data into the hands of their end users as seamlessly, as easily, and as effectively as possible. And as a result of that, we are obviously really big believers that data is king. So let's have a conversation about what that means. So just to kind of give you a run through of what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to talk real quickly about the DNA of SimSource. We're going to talk about why we're even talking about tool data, right? What makes it king, and why does digitization matter so much? Is it really something great, or is it a trend? What is tool data exactly, right? Dietmar in his introduction is talking about the concept of digital twins, but there is more to tool data that we're going to talk about here. We're going to talk about the simple digital theory. Please notice the air quotes if you didn't see me. And then the not so simple reality of what actually has to happen. So real quick, tooling is in our DNA. Basically what we're saying is this company was born of a research project at a technical university in Germany in 1992 and has blossomed, just celebrating its 30th year anniversary. We do not sell tools. We do not seek to compete with distribution. We are strictly a company in business to help you manage the complexity of the topic we're going to talk about today. So with that being said, let's dive into it. Tooling data, CNC digitization, why it matters, right? So we look down this list, we see things like saving time, increasing quality, saving money, productivity, confidence, right? No more needing of the oh shit button. Well, what are we talking about here? I'm sorry, the OS button, right? But what are we talking about here? We are basically talking about the fact that if we can digitize our CNC manufacturing process and prove it out in advance of running our CNC programs, we can see all of these awesome benefits, right? Conservation of resources, improved safety, improved record keeping, getting to the point where you could actually cost allocate tools against jobs, understand where, things like that. They are all predicated on this concept of digitization. So when we talk about digitization, let's make it tactical, right? It's really neat to talk about digitization, but what is it? What does it look like? Well, here's just 4 of the best practices that come to mind. And I am someone that comes from manufacturing. I am a tool and die nerd. I grew up in machining and manufacturing, and these are the things that I think about when I talk about digitization. I talk about NC verification, right? Actually doing accurate collision avoidance and predictive movement of your machine to reduce the need for operator dependency and to get better parts. We talk about down in the bottom left, right? Automated tool pathing, getting to the point where you're not investing countless numbers of hours generating G code, but rather letting the system do it based on standards and processes and digital CNC data. Down in the bottom right, lights out machining, right? If for those of us, especially that are in businesses that are not just repetitive part manufacturing, when we want to get to lights out machining, we have to have faith that when we hit that start button and walk away, that we're going to be safe. We're going to make a good part, and we're going to be happy with what we see in the morning and not a wrecked machine, right? And then last, what we're talking about today, what Dietmar touched on in his introduction, the concept of tool management systems, right? The concept of truly understanding your tooling inventory, where it's going, how it's used, controlling the flow of that information through your plant. All of these are the best practices when we talk about digitization. But before we dive into that anymore, I got to ask you a question, right? What one idea, what common thread runs between and through all of those best practices? And my hint to you is that it's kind of an important thread. It is the primary determiner of your ability to succeed. If you don't have this part right, the rest isn't going to work out for you so well. Well, what's the answer? We're talking about tool data. We're talking about having a proper foundation of accurate, of high quality, of well-developed information about your tooling sets. Everything from the models that Dietmar talked about and others, right? So when we talk about tool data, what are we actually talking about, right? Let's get some brass tacks here. So first on your upper left, you see parameters, right? We're talking about information about the tool, oftentimes alphanumeric, oftentimes measurements, things that can be written down, qualitatively understood, and perhaps transferred over into some other system. Down on the bottom left, we talk about sales collateral, right? Those could be photographs that might be real important for an operator trying to understand something. If you're a vendor, it could be for shipping your product, receiving your product in your warehouse, maybe for the folks on this call. And down on the bottom right, we talk about speeds and feeds, right? We actually talk about speeds and misfeeds, not just in general, but by material, by coding, right? All of that is part of tool data. And then also, last but not least, in the upper right, the digital twins that Dietmar was referring to. From SimSource's perspective, this holistic look at what you're seeing on your screen is what we would call tool data. Now, here's the simple theory that I talked about. The market desperately wants you to believe that this is a really easy topic, that it's simple, right? Because so many of the digital tools that are available in the marketplace, right, for those best practices I talked about earlier, they all rely on this data. But if we're going to be totally forthright here, we need our customers to better understand the complexity of getting this done, right? I guess is the best way I could put it. So if we look here, we see some ads from around the industry, and you can see the words that I'm highlighting. They're all talking about how easy it is to go and secure the data you need, as if you can just go to a website and download it and have it be perfect. But let's talk about how simple it really is, right? Like, what is a realistic example of this? So this would be a job shop from my perspective, right? Pretty typical for the types that I have gone into, making automotive stamping parts. We talk about a facility that may have between 5,000 and 10,000. It says tools, we're talking about items, right? Holders, collets, mills, inserts, you name it. They probably are serving or being served by anywhere from 10 to 15 potential vendors making those items. If we look at their systems, we probably have 2 CAM programming systems. Most all of the shops do today, where we maybe have one tool that's good for our 5-axis and kind of fancy stuff, and then we got something a little simpler for our 2D. We most likely have a third-party collision avoidance system, so we can see our programs posted out and know that they're good. And of course, we have a ZOLLER TMS if we're on this call or we're thinking about it, right? So that is the environment that this tool data needs to enter. So what does the shop need? What do the operators need? Well, 2D, right? They need 3D. They need parameters. They need speed and feed guidance. And really what they need is quality, right? It's not good enough to get that information if they got to spend a bunch of time researching it, double checking it, and learning the hard way. And what do the vendors all tell us? Sure, there's a standard interface for that. No problem. We'll get you what you need. But let's talk about how simple it is, right? So this is a chart developed by our engineering folks in Germany, and I think it's a really great depiction. Now, bear with me. Some of the stuff we're going to talk about here is going to get a little bit in the weeds, but I'm telling you that there are weeds that are really important to you. If you're a business owner here, a plant manager, there's a certain amount of stuff you need to understand to appreciate the complexity, and I think this is one of the ones that's going to help. So if we look at our chart there across the top, we see tool provider, right? So imagine that is your 10 to 15 companies providing items into your facility. Well, then inside of your facility, you have target systems, right? You have one CAM program, maybe 2. You have the collision avoidance system. You have your TMS, right? You have all of these target systems. Well, each of these target systems needs different information presented in oftentimes a different way to work inside of its own environment, right? So if you have tool provider number 1, I don't know, that's Sandvik company. You need to have Sandvik models that are going to work in each of your target systems, right? Now we're going to go to our next provider. Now we're looking at Sumitomo, right? Now we're going to say, okay, now we need Sumitomo details for each of our systems. And you can see how that would multiply out as we go through a list of these great companies around the world providing our items. So, you know, long story short, it becomes very, very complex. And well, why does it get complex? Well, here's why, right? There's 2 factors we're talking about. One is data specification. The other is data format. When we talk about data specification, we're talking about what information the customer needs. Now, inside of your facility, the customer may be the machinist. The customer may be the MC programmer, right? What do they need, right? And then what information do we actually have to give them, right? We have that problem. And then underneath it, how exactly does a customer need that information? Like what kind of file formats, what parameters, measured how, from where, right? We need to understand all that. And then even if we have it, now we have to say, are we even able to get it to them in a format that they need? So the typical industry answer to this is, yeah, that's why we have international standards, right? DIN, ISO, we're good. Well, they present a lot of challenges, right? So as you seek to digitize your manufacturing environment, you're going to find that the current international standards are in. This is the way our folks in Germany describe it, right? They are oftentimes incomplete. They are normally very inflexible, and oftentimes they are interfering or contradicting with one another, right? And making that a little more complex, they really only speak to tool geometry, right? So when we talk about things like edge diameter and interface codes, right? We got DIN 4000, we got ISO 13399. We talk about a drawing of the tool, a layout of the tool, a 3D model. We have some governance there. But now when we look at the right side here, when we're talking about feed and cutting depths and commercial and supplier information, product information, delivery information, things like that, those have nothing to do with the international standards, which means that every one of these vendors are completely on their own to decide how they're going to do that. So if you don't believe me, the way I tell you is here's the proof, right? There on the left side of the picture is probably, and this is just kind of a nonsense, some of these brands aren't even relevant, but it's the representation of that bookshelf, right? In your machine shop, where for the last 40, 50 years of your company, when you go to procure something, it's the book that somebody picks up to look for and find. And what's the first thing you got to know when you pick up a book? Who the book was produced by. But if we go over on the right side of the screen, the new technology versions that are replacing those books aren't very much different, right? If you want information about your tool, most of the time you're going strictly to the vendor's website where you can only look at the vendor's tools. And then in some of the other solutions that are appearing in the market, they have some search capability if you don't pick the vendor, but if you really want detail, you got to pick the vendor. Well, why is that? Because nobody that is in the business of designing these tools necessarily designs them the same way. They may have the same underlying standard, but they have things that they do unique, different to their company. And then if we start comparing between regions of the world, we start seeing real big differences. So how are you going to compare items across these differences when you can't compare the parameters? They don't match, right? So that's the reason why the industry's always worked this way. So now here we are with SimSource. We know this is going on. We get out and we start talking to our end users about what they think is involved in data acquisition. And most of them just talk about obtaining it, right? Finding the website, going to the cloud, downloading what we need, going to the vendor, calling somebody, and that's great. But now when you look at that complexity chart that I showed you, you start to realize that there's more to this than that, right? Even if you're lucky enough to get all of the records, it doesn't mean that they're going to be in the format your systems need. Well, let's just start there. It doesn't mean they're going to be in the format your systems need. So what we have to do is we have to, number one, enrich the data, right? Because not all vendors in the world have the same robustness of information, right? Some are going to give you more, some are going to give you less. And in either case, it doesn't even mean that it's enough for your application. So first we have to enrich it. Then we have to verify it, right? Just because they're providing it to us, do we really have faith that we want to kick off that $1 million machine or that $500,000 machine to run lights out and have confidence, right? So we want to verify it. And then last but not least, once that's done, we have to get it in the format that those downstream systems need, which might mean 3 or 4 different formats in a typical manufacturing environment. So when we talk about enrichment, let's talk about it. Let's make this look real, right? So you say, Dave, you're talking about needing to enrich the data. What are you talking about? Okay, well, the first thing we're talking about is most everyone is going to be able to provide you some basic geometric information. A tooling class, right? Is it an end mill? Is it a drill? Some basic geometric properties, and that's normally the price to entry that most people can meet. Now, when we get beyond that, we start getting into things like interface codes, right? How the items interact with one another. We start assigning graphics to the items, right? We start getting into some language dependent adjustments that need to be made. We go beyond the basic level and we get into CAM detail, right? We get into the information that we need for 2D and 3D programming according to a standard, right? We get into now logistics, accessories, spare parts, delivery. And now we start getting into process information, right? So now we're getting down from tool in hand, tool in shelf, tool in use, machining processes, workpiece materials, and then finally the gold standard, speeds and feeds, right? So if you've accumulated all of the data for this, you can imagine how helpful, number one, it would be to your business, but you can also probably imagine by your own experiences right now, very few of your vendors, very few websites can give you this information. It's very elusive. So this is where digitization projects come to die, right? 2 things happen. Number one, the vendors making the tools are overwhelmed with inquiries. Talk to any of them. They will all tell you that it's the number one biggest topic they face. They're getting bombarded all the time with special requests from distributors large and small. And frankly, they don't have the people or the infrastructure to do it. And number 2, the companies who are undergoing the digitization projects, maybe now they've invested in their collision avoidance and they invested in their TMS, and now they realize they got to start building that database, and the time and the cost required becomes overwhelming, and a lot of the times the projects just stall out, never to be reborn again. So, and that being said, a couple takeaways, because I want this to have educational value for everybody. If you already are not involved in one of these digitization tools, you must contemplate a budget for when you bring that tool online, populating it with information, right? If we don't have that robust data set, the greatest software in the world isn't going to get the job done. So number one, you need that budget. You're going to want a key resource kind of shepherding that process along and overseeing its completion. And you got to understand that that's going to take some time no matter how you do it. And then beyond that, I will tell you also, this is a really important takeaway, especially for business managers who aren't into all the technical detail all the time. You will absolutely be told that there are solutions in the market that have data in the cloud and you can just go and download it. But you absolutely must understand that that is generic, kind of one size fits some, and will almost guaranteed not seamlessly work in your environment without a lot of rework or further refinement, as we've already talked about from here. So please be eyes wide open with those kinds of easy solutions. Now, the solution we're here to talk to you about today in the webinar and what we're about to show you is a tool developed by SimSource exactly for this purpose. Remember, we are born of tooling data. This is all we do. And 30 years ago, the company had the foresight to know it was time to invest in a standard and an engineering capability that was going to meet the needs of technology. And here we sit today as one of the only companies who can do what I'm about to show you. With a software that we offer called ToolLink, we're going to provide you basically, if you think of what a distributor is to your physical tool, we're going to give you the same for your digital tools. It's going to allow you to create a data profile that's unique to your environment, right? And when I say data profile, I mean, you're going to be able to decide the parameters, the depth, and the quality of the information that you are going to need specifically for your environment so that your database is ready to go inside of your four walls. It's going to allow you to easily upload lists using Excel. It'll facilitate communication and data acquisition by way of dedicated portal for your business. In other words, you and your participating vendors and distributors will all be able to log into a site unique to you to help manage all of this. It's going to allow you to set up standardized communication templates that will automatically be transferring behind the scenes. It's going to automatically check data as it comes inbound, because again, being born of data, we understand when parameters make sense and when they don't. So when you get information in from your vendors and numbers don't jive, essentially the software is going to flag that for you and tell you right away. And then last but not least, it's going to allow you to create some specialized structures, even for special tools and non-standard parameters that you may want to add to existing tool groups. So that being said, I have a short video that we're going to go ahead and kick off here, and we're going to just kind of show you how this works. The reason I'm doing it by video is we'd be here for a really long time if I wanted to show you the process from start to finish in real time. So let's just go ahead and kick it off and have a look. So this tool is your quality gate, your process manager, it's your communications tool. It's really your one-stop shop, right? So here it is, customer logs in, and the customer can see an overview of where the items are that they have. And we do things by status. We do things by status, meaning is the record created? Is the record submitted? Has the record been given back to us by our supplier, right? Those initial categories, sorry about that, folks. Those initial categories are right here, summarized on that screen. And as you can see, nothing is in any of the categories. We're starting with a clean slate here. So that being said, one of the first things we're going to do for your company is we're going to establish the rules, right? What does the data need to look like to work inside of your environment? As a Zoller customer being on this webinar today, you're going to have access to a pre-developed rule engine specifically for Zoller, where you can see all of the parameters listed that potentially could define the tool. You could tell them, again, they'll already have it set up for Zoller, but if you wanted to add additional parameters, you can make them required or non. And now we've set up what the data needs to look like for your company. Now we can go in and start managing our supplier list, right? We can say, who are the people who are delivering the tools to us? Be they distributors, be they vendors. And we can also manage our manufacturer list, right? The brands that we use, the companies that we do business with. And if one of them isn't listed, you can go ahead and add another one, which for those of you familiar with ToolsUnited, this system is going to help you acquire data from inside our ecosystem at ToolsUnited and SimSource, and also from suppliers we don't work with. Now inside of here, you're going to start managing your communication templates, right? You're going to be able to pre-write your emails that will be going out to your vendors as you're looking for information. And here is, again, where we're putting in our suppliers. So let's say this is a distributor, or in this case, Main Supply. We're going to tell the system what brands Main Supply brings us, and we're going to make sure that record's built out. Same thing with communications, templates, emails, kind of all ready to go. So once that's done and you start your work, this is what a supplier will receive from you, right? A pre-written email that you developed that says, hey, on behalf of XYZ company, I am sending you this link. These are information that we are looking for. And when they click that link and they log in, they are now going to have a chance to basically, number one, start populating your requests, right? Look at the files you've requested. In this case, here they are, right? These are the tools. They're going to say, all right, this is what the customer is asking for from us. And that would obviously be a much longer list. And they would read it up into ToolLink. Now the items are visible. And now you can see their status, right? The first thing that's going to happen is ToolLink is going to evaluate the quality of that record against the rule engine. And it's going to tell you, does these data require, or to the supplier, does this even meet what your customer is asking you for, yes or no? If the answer is yes, then great. They're going to see green check marks. If not, they're going to see red X's. Now, let's say your distributor partner here says, uh-oh, I don't have the information my customer needs. I got to send that off to a vendor. That's what you just saw happen there. Same system would cascade down, and that vendor would be given a notification saying that you, the end user, are looking for this. This distributor asked for help. Manufacturer then would come and log in, right? They're diving into the system. Once they're in, they're going to see that, hey, this customer requested this record, or this distributor did for an end user. What is it that I need to give them? And they can now start making that request come to fruition. And across the top there, folks, you see the tabs, right? Like in process, that's how the information flows through the system. And I know this is going a little quick, but I'm trying to be mindful of time here. But you can kind of see, these are the things that we received inbound as requests. These are things that we are now working on, right? Now, this is whether it's your view, right, as the end user in ToolLink, whether this is your distributor, or in this case, the manufacturer. Everyone sees these same categories and manages the information until it's complete and ready to release. So that being said, in this case, the vendor read something in. He got all green check marks for that one. Mark is done. Notification gets sent back up the value stream saying it's done. The next thing they could do, quite frankly, and this could be your distributor, could be your vendor, they could reject the request. Hey, this item's obsolete. We don't even use it anymore, right? From there, they can, let's say, open one of these individual requests, and they can make manual edits, right, by seeing the fields that you're looking for and understanding what's missing. Or we provide them, again, whether this is you, the distributor, or the manufacturer, this really awesome Excel tool that allows them to do mass uploads of large numbers of tool all at one time. So basically, once those requests have been made and we send back, now you, as the end user, can log back in, and now you see all this stuff is populated, right? How many things were created? How many were received? What status are they all in? And now you can start following your vendor's progress as they're working on things, right? You can look at it by tab of where they are, right? Look, in this case, remember the vendor rejected one. Why did they reject it? They see it right there. Ones that are received and ready to be reviewed. Now, again, we see the process go down the line. These are ones that are ready to check, right? We believe that these are done, right? The rule engine green check marks are all good. So now you as a user can go ahead, eyeball the record, say, yep, that's ready to go, set it as released, and it moves on down the line, ready to read into Zoller. Same thing, you're gonna see a different, well, yeah, so now that we've marked that as released, we're ready to go ahead, hit the Zoller button, and you will now see that your ToolLink is creating a record specifically prepared to the exact specifications required by your Zoller TMS, where then you can go ahead and click Start Export, and from there, Felix will show you how it works. Sorry about that, lots of information. I know I kind of talk fast, but trying to be sensitive to time. Hopefully that all made sense. And that's it. Felix, back to you.
David, thank you very much. Now we will basically move on to the live presentation, how ToolLink will interact with tool management, and Felix will show that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, David, for the explanation. And I'm going to show you now, I've already said, the live portion, how we import actually out of ToolLink the data into Zoller TMS. What you can see here on the screen right now is ZOLLER TMS version 4 in our most recent release version 1.19.0 that we have released just a little bit ago. So in order to import something from ToolLink, ToolsUnited, both if possible, we do have this little button down here, the F3 button. And with this F3 button, I can open the ToolLink interface that I have to bring in from my other screen. So in here, we see exactly what we have seen on David's presentation. We have here the tools that are released, and I'm clicking on them. I will see a list of the free tools, which have the customer ID My Tool. And before I'm going to do this, I'm quickly going into our library, and I know that all the imported tools pop up in my import group. Right now, there's nothing in, and also here, when I go without group restriction to see everything, and I search for my tool, there's nothing in my database right now. So everything that you see happens live right now. So opening the interface back up and pulling the window over from other screen, here in the release section, and as already shown, or what's in the video, we have the option by clicking here on this little house to get the information. And what I can do is now import that file or that specific component into my system. However, we have ToolLink, and ToolLink has a specialty as we can create complete lists of tools. And we do not want to have you import each tool by itself. No, I'm just marking or highlighting all of these tools, selecting them, and now say over the selection here, make the export, go to my ZOLLER format, and just call my export webinar and start my export. So now the export is started, and I'm seeing it over here. And now you directly see on the screen the automatic import process from these three components into ZOLLER TMS. So I'm going back to my library, into my import group, and here they are, my three components that were just imported in basically no time and are available. You automatically can see the graphics that are being created and that are being pulled down. So if the customer graphics, the manufacturer graphics are behind that, they're here, and we just can open them, and we easily see here, the file, the component itself. And the most important part is as well that we are having the article characteristic bar automatically filled out, as we see here in this case for this holder. So all this information comes from the cloud, so you don't have to enter that information in manually. Everything is here. And you also could create the graphics if there are no manufacturer graphics out of our system easily. Just selecting here a different component, which is, for example, a drill that we have here. And also here, ToolsUnited or SimSort has the capability with their software to create 3D files and contours already if the manufacturer will not provide them. What I want to show here in this case is, we have all this article data again, and we have everything filled out. But what if I don't have, for example, CAM article characteristics, but you have a CAM interface? So that's pretty easy, because I just, by one button click, clicking here my F4 button, my information is going to be translated from the ISO 13499 standard information into the CAM specific article characteristics. And now this component is set and can be directly used inside the CAM system after I have transferred everything for the to the tool level. That is a pretty good function, because one of the big pain points is that usually you have to import all or input all these values manually by hand and so on, and now you just click one button. After going, for example, you have a different CAM article characteristic bar, you synchronize this information, and now it also pops up faster as it gets the information in the cache. If you have, for example, a different system here as well, I can easily simply click that, and I'm good to go. So I will quickly do that as well for my holder again, to also show you that later on here, going to my Siemens NX article characteristic bar and pressing, and my holder information is getting transferred over as I need that for the tool level later on for my example. And another example here, I have two free tools, and the other one, as we already can see in the description, is an insert. So which then gives us the possibility to also download or get non-rotationary symmetric tools, so static components, also like turning holders, as long as they're defined right after the rule engine inside Zoller TMS, everything comes together the right way. Jumping over to our manage tool level, now it is very easy to create a tool assembly. And I'm just calling this tool assembly a webinar demo. For example, I can give it a T number if I would like to, and an additional description and fill out my basic values. But now what I'm going to do is I'm just selecting here the two parts that I need in this case, going to my single component group, having my two parts, entering them in here. And now I directly see here, for example, going to my 3D assembly, and I have my 3D file assembled the right way, and I can create all my additional graphics out of this component and make them available for my CAM system. As we already have seen, we do have the article characteristics available. So in this case, I'm going to the Siemens Next as I prepared this for both components, and I press my F3 synchronization button, and it will populate the data from the single component level to my tool level, also with just one button click. So you do not have to fill out all this information here on the tool level again. No, it's easily done also with a click of a button, and the data is transferred, is populated, the graphics are generated, and our tool assembly is ready to go for the actual CAM interface. Again, if you have multiple CAM interfaces, just with one button click, it's the same thing, and it works out smoothly. So yeah, that's it. That's the live part about TMS. You've seen it doesn't take a lot of time, as it's a really fast process. So yeah, thank you. And Dietmar, I will hand it back over to you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I really want to point out what David and Felix explained. In particular, it's very simple to select the required tools with the whole list for your shop. It's pretty intuitive, and then later on the import. When you think about, normally you would enter manually so many parameters. With this connection, ToolsUnited and Zoller, it's a child's play. I think Felix has not entered one alphanumeric sign, be it a number or letter. It was everything just import, synchronize, and you're good to go. So now, once again, Felix and David, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have received a couple of questions from our viewers. I think the first question I will answer. The question was, will this session be recorded and distributed? The answer is yes. The next question, I think, goes to you, David. A gentleman asked, so is this an addition to our membership to ToolsUnited?
Yep, great question. So yes, when we think about SimSource, we basically think about three products: ToolsUnited, the one you just asked about, a different product used by many of our vendor partners you probably interact with and don't realize, and then ToolLink. ToolLink is an additional cost if you are a ToolsUnited subscriber, but it's a relatively small incremental cost. And specifically, it's extra because it's a tool that's been developed to get you the things that really ToolsUnited can't get you. So for that reason, it is a small additional charge. Zoller's got a great deal for that on you, and I'm sure they'll talk about that in a little bit.
Thank you. I think the next question is also for you again, David. Are the vendors we can speak with using ToolLink's service limited to ToolLink's catalog, or is it possible for us to add vendors for ToolLink to talk to on our behalf?
Perfect. The answer is the latter. ToolLink is specifically developed to help you manage communication with vendors that do not already participate in the ToolsUnited ecosystem. Because once a vendor is brought into the ToolsUnited ecosystem, the data becomes very, very rich, and the need to go and source it independently like this is drastically reduced. So this tool was specifically developed for our end users to help them manage the process of obtaining, enriching, and verifying data that is not on ToolsUnited. So great question.
Okay, thank you for that again. The next question is also going out to you, David. Are tag data and supplier information also imported if defined at ToolsUnited?
So can you repeat that one more time, Dietmar?
Yes.
I just missed the beginning part.
Are tag data and supplier information also imported if defined at ToolsUnited?
So the answer is everything that's defined by ToolsUnited and that exists for ToolsUnited can be brought in by ToolLink, right? The first thing ToolLink's going to do when you set up your rule engine, in this case, your pre-populated one for Zoller, and you upload your list of items that you're looking for, the first check it's going to do is with the ToolsUnited universe. It's going to find anything that it can bring in that we already are in possession of globally. Now, there may be parameters that you are going to want that your vendor didn't provide in the first place. Because remember, we talked about data needing to be enriched, even by the vendors. So not all of them have the same amount to give us as ToolsUnited in this case when they start. So sometimes things you may need for your environment will not exist on ToolsUnited because your vendor didn't have them for us in the beginning. But now ToolLink will help you go to that vendor directly and secure those additional details. Hope that answers the question.
Yes, I think so. Also, thank you for that, Felix. I think the next question is for you. In TMS Gold, does the ToolsUnited will be available as default or need to be activated? You are muted.
Yes. So in general, the button that I used is embedded starting with TMS Bronze. So it's available in Bronze, Silver, and Gold. In addition, there's obviously the ToolsUnited or ToolLink subscription, and based on what you have, there's a different link that we can just embed in our settings, and then clicking on that button will either open ToolsUnited or ToolLink website.
Thank you for that. The next question is for you, David. How do I navigate to it from the web? If I'm currently in ToolsUnited, how do I get to ToolLink?
The good answer is you can't. ToolLink, remember, is set up specific to your location, right? It's for you, for your occurrence. So unless you have a ToolLink existing subscription, you can't get to it from there. Once your account has been set up, a dedicated URL will be provided. And whether or not that exact URL can be gotten to later from ToolsUnited, I still don't think it can. I think you're going to be using a dedicated link provided to you when your account is set up.
Okay, very good. I think, Felix, the next question is for you because this was an existing user. ToolLink cost, is it set or based on quantity?
So we have to differentiate between as a customer will receive it for us or later continues to, after our 6-month subscription that we have, goes then continues with SimSource. So Zoller offers a package for either ToolsUnited or ToolLink based on the amount of Zoller TMS licenses that you have. During the 6 months, you can either download as much as you would like to from ToolLink or ToolsUnited. After that, it's a subscription that has to be renewed with SimSource directly, and then there's the SimSource cost that comes into place.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think this is also a good question from all Zoller existing customer. There was a question, when do you plan to roll out the link, the special ToolLink for Zoller? I think the answer is please contact Felix or somebody at Zoller. We will basically provide you the quotation. And then afterwards, David explained that we are providing the respective code that you can log in.
Yeah, and perhaps also the user was mentioning is when they buy from you, they are getting a pre-prepared rule engine already for them, specifically for Zoller TMS. So the amount of work to get it up and going should really be next to zero. It's already been proven out very well over the years.
Excellent. The next question actually could be for both of you. I'm not 100% sure. The question is, how would this work with already established tool parts, single components?
Yeah, I can answer that. So inside Zoller, we have a function for the import from ToolsUnited or ToolLink, which is called update mode. So if there's already an existing component, but for example, the article characteristics are missing and you download that component with the same component ID, it will just override the missing information or will establish these in the database.
Very good. I think the next question is for you, Felix, again. Update for all tools at once per tool or once per tool.
I mean, it goes back to the update feature. I mean, when we import multiple tools at once, it will do the update function for all of these tools. If we do one tool by the time, then we update one tool by a time.
Yeah. Does the update also contain connection points automatically?
Yes, I mean, in general, the models that ToolsUnited creates either by themselves or receive from vendors, they have all the ISO 13499 coordinate systems already included. So MCS, PCS, CSW if required. And if not, usually SimSource goes back to the vendor, make sure that they get the respective coordinate systems and write files. So they have a really good relationship and taking care of that. But as you have seen with the Skrillex example, if there's absolutely no 3D file, ToolsUnited has a 3D generator in the background and can create the files with the respective coordinate systems after the standard as well.
For whatever it's worth, Felix, if I can add on to that, you touched on it. SimSource globally has been working with many of the world's tool vendors for many years. As you go to many of the vendor websites, you're actually interacting with SimSource software branded for the vendor. Which means that also, in addition to what Felix said, we also have very good working relationships with these folks who have told us routinely that this interface and the ability to manage data this way is exponentially easier for them than what they're accustomed to dealing with. So I think that you'll find that experience very positive as you're going about using the system as well.
I think the next question could be for both of you. Would the downloaded CAD file be layered to our current layering configuration?
I'll let you do that one, yes.
Yeah, I mean, the step file goes exactly back to what I just said. It will contain all the coordinate systems that are required. And yes, for the DXF files, it comes in a layering standard, but it usually or sometimes does not follow the BMG layer free concept for that. But it's easy to just with one button click inside TMS to create a DXF file that follows the standard that we require.
Excellent. So gentlemen, I think all the questions were answered. I would like to thank you, all the participants, for joining ZOLLER and ToolsUnited at today's session. Plan is basically that we kind of extend that in future. Once again, thank you very much. Please feel free to reach out to Felix or David later on with any other question, or contact your local sales representative. We are here to help and looking forward to support all of you. Thank you very much. See you the next time.
Thank you.